All right, happy Monday. Welcome in. It is the Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. I hope everybody had a great weekend, up and rolling. A ton to dive into here today. Reds stumble out of the gate, coming right out of the All-Star break, of course. We should not be that surprised. I'll tell you why coming up here in just a moment. What does this do as far as altering their goal and approach as the trade deadline approaches? We'll talk about that here in just a few moments. The Cincinnati Bengals, Duke Tobin, Mike Brown addressed the media. A lot to dissect there as they kind of dive into all the fun talking points that involve the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, Jamar Chase's contract being a big talking point. We do get a big update on the health of Joe Burrow, so that is huge for Bengals fans. We'll talk about that in just a moment. TBT on WING. That makes its return coming up here later on tonight. In fact, it's the matchup that the TBT has been trying to position itself for quite a few years now. In fact, I can't tell you how many times that we have seen the Red Scare and Carmen's Crew be paired up in first-round games where the winner of those two particular matchups would square off in round two. One year we had Carmen's Crew win without Dayton winning. One year we had Red Scare win without Carmen's Crew winning. We finally get both of them on the same page. We'll be on the call later on tonight. Carmen's Crew, the Buckeye alumni team, going up against the Red Scare, the alumni team for the Dayton Flyers. Former Flyer Norm Greavy and myself, we will be on the call coming up later on tonight at 8 o'clock. All right, so as I said, Scott Campbell, what up, Scott? Hope you're doing well. He says, let's go Reds, ? It's been rough. It has been rough. So earlier today, of course, hosting Off the Bench with Chatterbox, and of course, you hear that show right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. We talked about the Cincinnati Reds. We talked about their, I should say, expected slow start coming out of the break, right? And I start to look at the Cincinnati Reds, and every single time I want to buy in, every single time I start to really, truly feel like I could trust this team to maybe go on a slightly interesting run to get me to buy in, they do something that reminds me that this is not a very good baseball team. Every time I think that we are onto something, they remind me that this just is not a very good baseball team, simply put. And I had a little excitement. They won 5 of their last 7 to close out the first half, if you will, the pre-All-Star break portion of the season. But there is something about whatever it is coming out of the gates, second half of the season, post-All-Star break, where this team just can't get it going together. They can't get it figured out. We're going to talk some Bengals coming up, and there's going to be an update about their approach for the preseason. Everyone has hot takes about, well, why do the Bengals keep having such a slow start every year? Why is it that we are questioning the Bengals' playoff chances every September, but then they look pretty damn good by the time the playoffs get here? But why do they make it so dang hard? There are just some things that we can't put our finger on. It's not like Zach Taylor does a bad job, but whatever he does, clearly it does not push the right buttons to have this team prepared to play come September. And then you got to ask yourself, well, what is it about David Bell, as he's been here for 6-7 years now? What is it about David Bell that he is not pushing the right buttons for this team coming out of the All-Star break? I have seen it with a veteran-led roster. I have now seen it with a youth-filled roster. Whatever buttons he is supposed to push to get this team to buy in at the All-Star break, he's not pushing them. He's not pushing them. The Cincinnati Reds get swept coming out of the All-Star break against the Nationals on the road, and it doesn't get any easier because they kick off a series with the Atlanta Braves on the road coming up here later on tonight. But you look back last year, all right, you look at 2023. Now, this is, again, coming off one of the hottest months in the history of the franchise, or I should say in recent history for the franchise. Remember how dominant they were to start, how dominant they were in June of 23? That's really what kind of revolutionized the franchise with the fan base. It got us to buy back in a little bit, right? Like we were super jacked. Cincinnati Reds, you know how they start their second half of the season last year? Well, they get swept by the Milwaukee Brewers at Great American Ballpark. And then they have a 4-game series with the Giants at Great American Ballpark, and they end up splitting, but they lose the first 2 of that series. They shot themselves in the foot right off the bat coming out of the All-Star break, okay? 2021. All right, so by the way, 2023, they're 3-2 coming out of the All-Star break. Not great. All right, a game above 500. Not great coming out of the All-Star break. And then, oh, look, 2021, they lose their first 4 games. They lose 5 of their first 6 coming out of the All-Star break. This is a pattern. Okay, this is a pattern. The amount of urgency that this team always matches heading into the All-Star break, they never come out on the other side with it. I don't know. I've never been a manager. I don't know what buttons he's supposed to be pushing, talking about David Bell. I don't know what these athletes need to be doing during their downtime during the All-Star break. But whatever they are doing and whatever they are not doing, whatever it is, it's frustrating. I don't blame one single Reds fan out there right now who is pissed off at this team, because you should be. The expectation is to win. The expectation is to compete. The expectation is for this team to match the urgency of the calendar year, right? Right now, what the calendar is telling us is that we are less than 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. What the calendar is telling us is that although you have the rest of July and all of August and September to figure it out, you technically only have a week and a half left for the Reds to really look at this roster, for the Reds to evaluate kind of where we're at this point of the season and say, do we blow this up, or do we actually try to add and make this team more competitive? What has David Bell done for you to feel comfortable for this team to go add and make this team more competitive? What has this lineup done from a consistency standpoint that makes you feel like, man, the Reds need to go add talent to this roster to help at the trade deadline? I don't know what they've done. It's not Shaw. Hope you're doing well. Shaw says, is that coaching? Is that on David Bell and the managerial staff? I think that there's plenty of blame to go around. This team can't be good enough to sweep the New York Yankees in New York and then not be able to figure it out when they're at home against teams that they should beat. Now, the Nationals, very good team, and they're facing the Nationals on the road. But this is my whole problem. You don't tell me, oh, man, the Reds, they go on the road and they sweep New York in New York. They sweep the Dodgers. They sweep Philadelphia. They take care of the Phillies, that they beat good teams. But playoff teams, good teams beat the bad teams. To me, I think that I love the fact that an Elly De La Cruz and a Jonathan India and a Matt McClain, I love that, and Matt McClain's been out for the year, but you see my point. I love that these guys can rise to the challenge of facing a good Dodgers team on the road. I love the fact that this team can rise to the challenge and the occasion of going to New York and playing the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. I love that they can rise to that occasion and beat New York. But when you can't beat the Tigers at home in one game of the 3-game series, I'm not that impressed anymore. When you take 3 or 4 against the Rockies, that's great. You can't sweep the Marlins. Like it's just you struggle beating bad teams. And the Nationals, to come out and get swept right out of the All-Star break, that's kind of on David Bell. That's kind of on this coaching and managerial staff to a certain extent, to a certain degree. Shaw says, coming out of the break and always being flat, is that on coaching? Yes, I do believe that kind of sets the tone. But at the same time, we're talking about a bunch of really young, guys in their lower 20s. Like, I've never understood why a team needs a manager or a coach to tell you, hey, guys, give a damn. Hey, guys, just so you know, the trade deadline's coming up, and we really need to show the ownership that, hey, we're worth a damn. So if we could try, that'd be great. So although, yes, I blame David Bell to a certain extent, and Shaw, I definitely see where you're coming from with this. I find it fascinating that is just a common Joe radio host here that has never played professional sports at a high level. I just have a hard time trying to comprehend why athletes need to be told, hey, care, try, play a little harder, play like your playoff lives depend on it. That's what's wild to me. So, Shaw, you're not wrong. I do believe that the manager and coaches in any sport, whether it's a coach in football, manager in baseball, coach in basketball, that always goes to the coach as far as having them prepared to play. My biggest gripe has always been, though, I can't stand when millionaire, billionaire athletes need to be told to care to do their job. And I'm not saying that the Reds don't care, but how do you get swept? How do you lose 3 straight? I don't want to hear about injuries. This team is still okay. They have enough weapons to not get swept. This is not a bad team. This is not the A's. This is not the Tigers. This is, or maybe they are, or are they? Maybe I'm giving them too much credit. Maybe I'm giving David Bell too much credit. Maybe I'm giving this roster too much credit, even as banged up as they are. But when they win ball games, it's because of the production that they get from some of their main core, their main pieces, the Jonathan Indias, the Spencer Steers, the Elly De La Cruzes, like those guys. Like, that matters. If you're good enough to go on the road and sweep the Yankees, I don't, and not bring up after sweeping the Yankees in New York, no one was talking injuries. It wasn't they overcome injuries to beat New York in New York. It was dominant pitching, complemented by great bullpen play, and then, of course, situational hitting, and, of course, great performances from Elly De La Cruz. That's the recipe to go beat New York in New York. But all of a sudden, star players can't make star plays when they return home. Very good pitching staff can't make enough quality plays to get a quality win. Like, come on. I'm frustrated with this team coming out of the All-Star break. I really am. I think at a certain point, even if David Bell's not to blame for everything, And I hate to do the whole fire David Bell shtick, but I don't look at it as a shtick. And I don't look at it as fire David Bell right now. But if I'm still talking about David Bell a year from now at this time, I really question the front office at that point. I really do. Because David Bell, if anything, just a different voice in that clubhouse, just a different, form of direction is what is definitely needed for this young roster. It is what it is. So we'll see what ends up happening. The Reds are back in action coming up later on tonight. They do have game 1 against the Atlanta Braves. Hunter Green is on the mound. They have lost 4 straight. They've lost their first 3 coming out of the All-Star break. Remember, they lost against the Marlins heading in, to the pause of the season. But not good. Very flat coming out. I like the performance from Andrew Abbott, but we watched what happened. 6+ innings of dominant starting pitching, and they still couldn't get the job done. Hunter Green's going to have to pitch lights out tonight, but he's going to have to get some run support. And that's the big question mark right there as far as that's concerned. All right. It's Kinner and Kev Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM, 518-1410, 518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. Reds fans, am I being a little too harsh about this team right now? Am I giving them too much credit? Why is it when they beat the Yankees for 3 in New York and sweep the Yankees, we're talking about their great starting pitching. We're talking about their great bullpen play. We're talking about the stars in this lineup. We didn't talk about the guys who weren't there. We talked about the guys who were. So why is it when it goes poorly, we talk about the guys who aren't there, all while the guys who are there aren't living up to their end of the bargain either? It is up to those guys to be stars, even with the absence of the others. And kudos to the starting pitching. I don't blame Andrew Abbott. I don't blame guys like Hunter Green, but these guys, they need some run support. That's not a hot take. That's been what they've been battling all year. But for everyone out there that says David Bell needs to be the reason that they come out hotter, I put some of that on the athletes as well, on the players. Ellie De La Cruz, he's been great, and I'm not pinpointing him or Jonathan India or others, but if you're a professional athlete and you need your manager to say, hey, guys, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the standings, but we're right there. If you guys could play hard, that'd be great. I don't think they need that. And if they do, that's a problem. But at the same time, the David Bell problem is whatever message is being delivered, it's either stale, it's not connecting, it's just not the right one. Who knows? But I'm really hoping that this isn't the start of the end of the season for the Cincinnati Reds. It's been a up and down, at times fun season for the Reds. I know football, we are 45 days away from kickoff. I'm just hoping that the Reds give us a little bit more this season. I'm hoping that they give us a reason to continue to buy in when it's all said and done. A record amount of money was spent by the Cincinnati Reds on their most recent first-round draft pick, Chase Burns, the number 1 pitcher in baseball. We'll talk about that a little bit more coming up around the corner. The Cincinnati Bengals also making some news over the weekend as they were able to get the final first-round pick of the 2024 NFL Draft to finally sign his contract. We'll talk about why that's big for the Bengals. Also, Netflix announced a new documentary series coming out on Connor Stallions and the Michigan Wolverines cheating scandal. We'll talk about that coming up here shortly as well. All right, step away for a few moments. I'll be right back. 518-1410, 518-1410. Give the show a call. We'll be right back. Justin Kinner back with you here on Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM. We're live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel. Appreciate you guys tuning in and hanging out here this afternoon. I hope everybody had a great weekend. We opened up. I'm just ticked off about the Cincinnati Reds. I know this isn't a perfect team. I know they have deficiencies. I know injuries have banged them up a little bit, but I just don't think that they are bad enough to get swept. And I don't think that they're in a position that they can afford to be swept. And I just think that timing sometimes matters. Like, I understand if the Reds are like on a crucial road stretch, okay, or if they've played X amount of straight days and they're a little banged up, and you could see how a sweep can happen in the midst of that. You know what I mean? But like, I'm not as forgiving coming out of an All-Star break. I'm just not. And you could say, well, they just kind of got to get back in the rhythm a little bit. Well, the Nationals didn't need to get back in the rhythm. They came out swinging. They came out with urgency. They came out with fire. And that matters to me. I think that matters big time. In 4 of the last 5 years, the Reds have lost at least 3 straight coming out of the All-Star break. At least 3 straight. Multiple times, I mean, losing 5 of 7, losing 7 of 10. I mean, this is a team that drastically needs help trying to find a way to get motivated to play. I mean, what are we doing here? Like that's the problem I have with this, and I've tried as I've gotten older doing stuff like this to not always go for the low hanging fruit, to fire the manager, fire the coach. You know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, you do have to look at the athletes and say you're paid to make a difference as well. I think it's lazy just to say, well, David Bell's the problem. I am not going to stand here and argue that David Bell's the solution, but I don't know if he's the problem. All right, but you look at the Washington Nationals. It's not a great baseball team. You got swept by a team that right now is 6 games under 500. Now you're saying, well, the Reds are also 6 games under 500. The Reds were 3 games better than the Nationals before they came and took 3 straight from your Reds. They're at home. It's the second half of the season. The Nationals are in a very similar spot. They know that they're technically in the mix of things as well as far as the wild card's concerned. They're both 4 games back. The Nationals would have been, I mean, the Reds had a chance to bury the Nationals. The reason that's important right now, the only 2 teams that are worse than the Reds as far as the standings are concerned are 2 teams that are double-digit games out of the wild card spot. Everyone else is at least 4 games out. The Rockies are 15 games back, and the Marlins are 15 and a half back. Now, the Cincinnati Reds, after getting swept by the Tigers last week, they took 3 of 4 from the Rockies. Great. They took 2 or 3 from the Marlins. Fantastic. They went 5-2 in their last 7 after getting swept 3 straight against the Tigers. All right, and the Tigers are 49-51. They're 6 games back of the American League wild game spot, but they also swept the Yankees in New York, you know, a team that has the sitting right atop the wild card in the American League at 59-42. They're good enough to sweep the Yankees in New York, but they can't get a win against an under 500 Tigers team. They're good enough to sweep the Yankees in New York, good enough to sweep the Dodgers, good enough to handle the Phillies, but they can't get at least 1 win against the Washington Nationals. That's inexcusable. Is it all on David Bell? No. I put a lot of it on the athletes as well, on the players. And a lot of people want to yell at David Bell, but at the same time, is David Bell going to say, hey guys, focus more, care more, play harder, don't get swept by a bad Nationals team? I mean, yes, David Bell ultimately is to blame, but man, it's frustrating. Carrie, I hope you're doing well. I appreciate Carrie. Carrie Reinert messages in the message saying that this Reds team needs a Lou Piniella. Just look at the 1990 Reds. Holding accountability reaps rewards. I cannot agree with you anymore. Like I agree 1,000%. The problem is I just, based on today's version of baseball, I don't know if Lou Piniella matters. That's what stinks. I'm with you. You know, I was actually excited when the White Sox brought Tony La Russa, on board a few years ago, because I'm like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. How does an old school manager blend in today's baseball? You know, I know a lot of baseball guys get upset when we say that the manager doesn't necessarily matter as much anymore. And I think the reason I've kind of walked my hot take on David Bell back a bit is because I don't know how much of an impact he truly makes. And what I mean by that is everything is dumbed down to an iPad. And now you're probably saying, and the baseball nerds are going to say, Kinner, you're oversimplifying it. I'm not. You guys have an answer for every decision that a manager makes. Look at his splits. All right. Look at his splits. Look at his numbers against left-handed pitching when there's 85 stars out and the moon's on this side and there's only fans on this side of the stadium. I mean, you guys have a stat for everything to justify everything that a manager does to make it sound like this manager is great. But what it sounds like is if the numbers are telling you that everything he does is the right decision based on the numbers, it sounds like it doesn't matter who the hell's making the decisions, because it sounds like the decision has been made regardless of whose name is filled in under team manager. And this isn't a debate, we don't need to get into a back and forth, but everyone out there saying, I got a message during the break. Someone called and said, why are you defending David Bell so much? I go, I'm kind of not. I kind of said the Reds need to make a change. I just don't know what that change is going to be. So, Carrie, I agree with you. The Lou Piniella effect back in the day when Lou Piniella would rip your ass if you didn't do what you were supposed to. If you're not playing well, he's going to rip your ass because, hey, that's what coaches do in any sport. That's what a good manager does in baseball. That guy doesn't exist anymore. That's why Tony La Russa didn't last long when he came back to baseball. But I miss the old school managers. I really do. I miss the managers that went with their gut. I wish the managers that said, hey, I know your numbers aren't great, but you're playing well right now. And here's what I like. I miss those guys. All right. And I know that's a tired argument that gets brought up a lot now, but that's just where I'm at. Kerry, not wrong. I agree with you 1,000,000%. I just know that the baseball nerds out there, they're not going to allow that. They would rather a boring vanilla manager have an iPad run their baseball team than a guy who gives a rip like a Lou Piniella that will at least try to find a way to motivate you into some kind of performance. I miss that about baseball. I love baseball. I hate that I'm always bashing the sport I love baseball, but there's so much I hate about it too. And yes, hate. I hate that the manager doesn't matter. And I find it cute and adorable that anyone out there thinks that it kind of does. That's why I'm not going to waste a lot of segments saying fire David Bell, because to a certain extent, it's not going to matter. The Reds front office has a certain view of how to use analytics. So no matter who is managing the team, they have to make their decisions based off those analytics, because the Reds, like every team in baseball, has invested millions and billions of dollars into these advanced analytics. So if they hire a manager that said, hey, I know you guys invested a ton in this product to research this stuff, but I'm going to go with my gut. And then that gut ultimately cost them a series or a game, even though I'm going to trust a baseball guy. That manager is going to get fired because they're going to say, we didn't spend all of this money for you to manage with your gut. That's what I hate about baseball. I hate that about baseball. I hate it. I love that in football right now, you are an Andy Reid away from winning a Super Bowl. That, man, we have the quarterback, we have the weapons, we have this, that, and the other. Man, if we only had that offensive genius to come in and put it all together. I hope football never gets to the point to where we dumb it down so much and overcomplicate it so much that an iPad can basically just make every NFL team look like every other NFL team. I love that the NFL looks different. I love that the Ravens win their way. I love that the Bengals win their way. I love that the Chiefs won it a very electric style way initially when they had Tyreek Hill and everybody, and now they have no-name wide receivers. They get a rookie running back 2 years ago in Pacheco, and they're a good run team. And they're an okay passing team, but they're back-to-back Super Bowl champions. I like that there's not a blueprint. There's a blueprint in how to construct a roster to be effective, but overall, there's gut. All right. And Andy Reid has a lot of gut. Let's be real, right? Like, let's be real. But his touch on the game, his flair for the game is what elevates the Chiefs over everybody else. I don't know if there's a manager in baseball. You can't say that the Reds are this away from being a good competitive team, this being a manager. Who is it, Aaron Boone? You know, who? Like, what manager is out there? Like, is there a guy out there that you're like, man, I wish we had him? I don't think that there is. That's why I'm not going to push David Bell out the door, because David Bell goes out the door, they'll just get another guy that'll give them the same answers in the interview process that David Bell gave them, that they felt comfortable handing them the iPad that supposedly has all the answers. So it is what it is. Scott Campbell says MLB just inducted an old school manager this past weekend into the Hall of Fame. Scott also goes on to say, I don't think managers make that many decisions anymore, independent of any other input from front office personnel. So John Slayton says there's definitely blame all over, but personally, I think a fresh voice is needed. That approach I respect. That approach I like. Right. And by the way, Kerry, no, I'm not saying I didn't like your response. I agree with your response 1,000,000%. It just stinks because those managers don't exist anymore. Or at least that managerial style isn't allowed anymore. There's no personalization of anything. And that's what I don't like. But as far as Slayton's comment is concerned, I agree with that a lot, because at the end of the day, maybe a fresh start is what a fresh voice, just to mix it up a bit. A different sounding voice telling you what the iPad is saying might wake this team up a bit. I mean, that's all I got. I'm not a former Major League ball player. I'm a sports talk radio host that is not going to pretend to be a know-it-all when it comes to Major League Baseball. But at a certain point, when the guys that really argue advanced analytics of baseball, that try to sound smarter than me and everybody else, they basically have found just a very long-term fancy way of saying, yeah, the manager doesn't make wrong decisions because the numbers show he made the right decision, although the results don't show it. All right, I'm a results-based guy. So if the numbers are saying I need to do this, but the results aren't justifying it, I don't care what the numbers are saying. The numbers say a lot. The results for David Bell, unfortunately, they say another. That's all. So Jeremiah Bennett, what up, Jeremiah? I know baseball has become all numbers and analytics, but whatever happened to having a feel for the game? If a guy is hot, play him. Fraley should be playing a lot more than he does, but it doesn't happen. I do understand injuries have killed us this year, and there are not a lot of options. I think Jeremiah, me and you agree, and I think pretty much the majority of the listeners here. I love the guys I work with over at Chatterbox. Like they lean more towards the advanced analytical model. We disagree on all of that stuff. That's why I do enjoy working with them, though. I love the back and forth, right? But like, they're very confident about a lot of the arguments that they make when it comes to using the numbers to justify anything. But as I said earlier, you could be a numbers guy. I'm a results guy. And numbers. All right, I can go play the lottery, the Powerball, and I can go pick the numbers, right? And I can justify every number. Oh, this number is the date of our anniversary. All right, this number was the time that I got told that I was going to be a father for the first time. This is the number that I got my raise to. And all this. The numbers could be right, but I still lose the Powerball. But you justified every number out there. You felt great about every number that you used for that Powerball ticket, but you didn't win. So that's great that you felt passionate about the numbers, but at the end of the day, the results matter, and the results just they're not there. So it is what it is. Gary Peck. Gary wrote a book. Gary, we have not gone back and forth on Facebook in a while, but I know we're about to butt heads as football season approaches. But I see you wrote a book. This is long. Sorry, Bell was 410 and 425. With 6 outs, with 6 out of 6 losing seasons, did not earn the job, period. Now for how he swept the Yankees and Dodgers and loses to Washington. When you have a team that struggles to hit, you must bat your 5 highest averages together at the top of the order, 1 through 5. It gives you the best chance. And you're right, that is long. I'm not being rude. I don't have time to read all of that. As far as that's concerned, the David Bell thing, yeah, ultimately, I mean, I guess I'm doing what I said I didn't want. I didn't want it to be a fire David Bell thing. But I guess at the end of the day, the big question I throw to all of you, and you're throwing out great responses, and I appreciate that. You're saying all of this, but Gary, if you hired a different manager that used the same analytics that are justifying all of David Bell's decisions, how are you confident we get a different result? I'm not confident in any of that as far as that's concerned. But Gary, I appreciate the response. Scott, Carrie, Jeremiah, John Slayton's. John, I think you asked, where did your question go? Let me get to it. John Slayton says, are you going to be at the TBT tonight? Yes. We got the TBT on WING tonight. We did not carry Carmen's Crew's first game over the weekend. We had technical difficulties we had to iron out, but we do have TBT action later on tonight. 8 o'clock the tip-off. Red Scare, Carmen's Crew. 8 o'clock right here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We're Dayton's radio home for Wright State basketball and Ohio State basketball, which is one reason we're carrying all of Carmen's Crew's alumni teams games, which we're super excited about. Both teams, Red Scare, Carmen's Crew, impressive wins over the weekend. That sets up tonight's matchup. We're pretty excited about that. Norm Greavy and I, by the way, former Flyer, will be on the call for that one. 8 o'clock, tune in. You can stream on the iHeart app. You can listen live, 1410 Wing AM. And, of course, you can still get tickets for the basketball tournament to go watch Ohio State versus Dayton, Carmen's Crew against the Red Scare here later on this evening. All right. I didn't mean to go that long on that particular topic, but I appreciate the interaction. So we'll step away for a few moments. Got a couple Bengals takes to throw out your way coming up here in a few. Joe Mixon, did he throw shade at his former team, the Bengals? Some say he did, some say he didn't. I'll let you be the judge. The Bengals, get the contract with Darius Mims done. Talk about the significance of that. And then, a health update on Joe Burrow that was given out by the team earlier today should have a lot of Bengals fans excited as well. So more of the Kinner and Kev show when we come back. Also, Netflix announced a new documentary for Connor Stallions and the cheating scandal that surrounded Michigan's 2024 controversial national championship. So we'll get to all of that when we come back. Kinner and Kev, 1410 ESPN Radio. right, and we are back. Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Just a reminder, coming up later on tonight, 8 o'clock, the TBT on WING. Carmen's Crew, Ohio State's alumni team, taking on the Red Scare, the Dayton Flyers alumni team. 8 o'clock to tip off UD Arena. Former Flyer Norm Greavy and myself, we will be at the arena bringing you the TBT second-round matchup between the two in-state match, I guess, the alumni rosters, if you will. Look, I love the TBT. We've been doing the TBT on WING since 2020, and I know that 2020 year, that was the COVID year. I remember ESPN, we had it all set up in here. We had the monitors, we had the direct link from, so Norm and I sat in the studio, and we just enjoyed lunch and we called the games all day. It was great. I absolutely loved it. It was different. I don't like calling games in the studio remotely, but considering those circumstances that year, I had a great time doing that. And after that, we got to go to the Cavelli Center in Columbus and call those games. That was the first TBT since COVID at the time to play in front of fans. And man, that was wild. And there was a point where had both and the Flyers, the Red Scare team, and Carmen's Crew team, both really, really good. That Carmen's Crew team featured more of your John Dieblers, your John Dieblers, your Aaron Kraft, and some of those guys from the Mata era. A lot of these guys are more from the Holtman era, although Sullinger is playing. Sullinger was the coach for the TBT team for years. They won the title in 19. He's now playing alongside Wesson, which is really neat. Caleb Wesson. So you see two bigs that did not play together during their time in college now playing together. I think that's pretty neat as far as that's concerned. So, yeah, so we'll have the call later on tonight, 8 o'clock, the tip-off. 1410 ESPN Radio, myself, former Flyer Norm Greavy. But yeah, the TBT has tried hard to set up this matchup. You know, you can't do it in the first round because they're two highest seeds, but they've set it up to where it's a second round matchup. They finally both got the win that they needed to set this up, and we're excited to have the matchup later on this evening on 1410 ESPN Radio. Talked a lot of Reds today. Appreciate everyone chiming in on that. We'll get back into some more Red stuff later on in the program. Nonetheless, couple updates, couple headlines to dive into. How about this? Dayton will host an exhibition game on October 20th. You remember when, speaking of Ohio State and Dayton playing one another in this TBT matchup later on tonight, Carmen's Crew and Red Scare, the Dayton Flyers and the Ohio State Buckeyes, Ohio State, Chris Holtman leading the way last year, led the Buckeyes at UD Arena, an exhibition game. And the Flyers are doing the same thing again this year with the charity exhibition game, this time welcoming in a former rival. How about this? Dayton will host an exhibition game on October 20th against Xavier, capping off the second year of community engagement events, championing adolescent and young adult mental health and suicide prevention. Now, remember, this is one of those NCAA waiver-approved charity games, and every team's allowed to get them. It doesn't go towards your exhibition total, so that's one reason why a lot of teams do like these. But look, it was cool seeing Ohio State play at the arena last year. The fact that Sean Miller and Xavier have agreed to do it is pretty neat. I know that Anthony Grant had released a statement earlier thanking Sean, thanking Coach Miller, and of course, Xavier for agreeing to do this. So that is pretty neat as far as that's concerned. All net proceeds from ticket sales will benefit the Jays Light, the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, and other charities within the Dayton and Cincinnati footprint. So keep that in mind. But I thought that was pretty cool. And it sounds like we're going to get some of these. I don't want to discredit the charity aspect of this, and I don't think I need to put out the disclaimer, but just in case all of you who like to twist my takes, I have to put that out there. I'm not down on the exhibition. I'm not down on what the charity that's involved with is, but it's it's a cool aspect because they get really cool teams to come to the arena. I just feel like it's one of those, you lose to Ohio State last year and it's no big deal. It's just an exhibition game. We weren't playing our guys. They were playing their guys. But if you beat Ohio State, you say you beat Ohio State. If you beat Xavier, oh man, look, we got the win on Xavier, right? Like, we can hide behind the charity stuff, and that's a great cause, and this is a great platform to do it. But I just love the underlying the talking points that come out of it. I just want to see Xavier play at UD Arena and it count, and I'm sure the Flyers would love to see that too. But these bigger schools won't go there on that and play a regular season game as far as that goes. And to be honest, the ego of Dayton, they won't go play there either in a one-off. Dayton's ego gets in their way too. Now, I love their non-conference schedule coming up this year. I don't know if the talent on the roster matches the intensity of that schedule, but we'll see. I do think that maybe one thing that might help Dayton is the fact that they don't have that premier player like a Deron Holmes or like an Obi Toppin, that this might be a big focus on just the whole team element. We'll see what ultimately ends up happening. But nonetheless, Xavier, Dayton, exhibition game, October 20th at the arena. So keep that in mind. Other news, I talked about this earlier. Netflix announced Sign Stealer, a documentary about Connor Stalions' side of the alleged sign stealing scheme at Michigan. That will premiere next month. In fact, what is today? The 22nd? Yeah, so the Sign Stealer documentary will debut or will premiere on Netflix on August 27th. Connor Stalions, to me, I'm really curious what comes out of this. Because these Netflix documentaries have been fun, but at the same time, a lot of it has been the subject of the documentary getting a lot of control of the content that's out there. For instance, I was really looking forward to Swamp Kings. I did not expect to see as much Urban Meyer in the documentary as we did. Now, as the documentary was going on and on and on, I started noticing that they're not actually attacking Florida for some of the darkest moments in that program's history during the Urban Meyer era. And they weren't being aggressive with covering it, but there was a lot of Urban sitting in that doc. And I think, to me, what I believe happened is Urban Meyer told Netflix in that documentary, I'm going to give you a lot of access, but I also get a say in how aggressive you are with diving into the weeds when it comes to these stories. And, so I'm very fascinated to see what angle Netflix does with this, because Connor Stalions, again, who knows, his name's going to fade off into the sunset at some point. I have a hard time believing that a lot of teams are going to really want to keep him around with all the noise that's going to surround him. There's always going to be people kind of keeping an eye on the program, whatever program he's associated with, saying, all right, what's he up to? We don't trust him. We don't trust them. So I'm fascinated to see the fallout from this documentary. Will we view him a different way? Will we view the sign stealing scandal a different way? I just have a hard time believing that Connor Stalions and Netflix is going to capitalize big on this. I'm going to give you a lot of access, but I'm not going to let you paint me to be this big time cheater that you are. And that's what he is. It's like Urban Meyer. There's a lot of bad things that happened under his watch. It didn't get painted that way because he gave them access. And I believe that's what's going to happen here as far as that's concerned. So we'll see. Regardless, I'm looking forward to it. I love these documentaries, especially after drama and controversy like this. I'm really excited about that as far as that's concerned. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. All right. Another headline to dive into. Adam Schefter released this earlier. And Shaw, I see her on hold. I'm going to get to Shaw in a moment. Let's get into this. There's more I got to dive into on this as far as this next update. So we're going to step away for a few moments. When we come back, the last unsigned 2024 draft pick is now done. Cincinnati Bengals have officially signed their first-round draft pick in Amarius Mims, 4-year, fully guaranteed contract worth up to $15 million. That includes $7.9 million as a signing bonus in the fifth-year team option. Okay, interesting dialogue about Mims in the perception of him and how important he's going to be to this team, not just this upcoming season, but moving forward. I'm curious Bengals fans' thoughts on that. I also want your thoughts on the sign stealing documentary that Netflix is going to be putting out on Connor Stalions. I know Shaw is dying to weigh in on that, so we'll get to him coming up around the corner as well. 518-1410, 518-1410. That's the number to jump in on the conversation. More of the Kinner and Kev Show next. All right, welcome back. Hour number 2. Happy Monday. I hope everybody is having a great day. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Off and rolling here. Look, last week, I hated last week. Last week, I already told the guys at Chatterbox, I've already told my bosses here, whatever week of the All-Star break is next week, I hate this is my least favorite week. Now, they always say the most talented sports talk host, that's usually when they thrive. Right, is that week before the All-Star break. I don't care. I'm not talented. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it next year. I'm not working next week of the All-Star break. That was horrible. But for whatever reason, this week just feels a little bit different. Obviously, teams starting to report to camp in the NFL, right? Teams back on the field post the second half of the season for baseball. Excited about that. Look, bottom line is even though the Reds just kicked us all in the man parts coming right out of the gate, right? Losing their first 3, getting swept right off the bat. They have Hunter Green on the mound tonight. They got the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta. Can they put an end to their 4-game losing streak? Can they put an end to they haven't won a game yet in the second half of the season? This, that, and the other. But, man, there's just so much to talk about. And say what you want about the TBT. A lot of people kind of poke fun at the TBT and say it's just an exhibition tournament, this, that, and the other. But I'm here to tell you, I really love the TBT. I'm a big nostalgia guy. I love when I get to see the guys that I grew up watching. And yes, I'm only 34. So, maybe I didn't grow up watching, like Terrence Dials and some of these guys, right? Like I get that. I didn't grow up watching Scoochie Smith, but I have fond memories of watching Scoochie Smith play at Dayton. We all have fond memories of watching the Flyers go on that Elite 8 run. Scoochie Smith, one of the biggest fan favorites in the history of the TBT. We know that. Right? Or of the Dayton Flyers, I'm sorry. We know that, right? And the same thing with Ohio State, Carmen's crew. All right. Now, when I was, coming into high school, in college, I was watching the Aaron Crafts and the John Dieblers and the William Bufords and guys like that. So, and the Costa Kufases. So getting to watch them play for TBT when they did was pretty exciting because I remember them from when I was in high school. And then you see the Chris Holtman era guys a little bit. You have your Weston brothers playing. Obviously, it's going to be kind of cool to see a guy from the Thad Matta era play with the Chris Holtman era when you're going to have, the Weston brothers playing with, of course, Solinger. I think that's pretty neat. I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited about the energy that's going to be at the arena tonight. The one thing I always love about this is that despite the fact that it's an exhibition tournament, again, $1 million on the line, I take some pride in doing a show in the city that also has the school that the inventor of the Elam ending graduated from. So shout out to Mr. Nick Elam, by the way. We had him on the program last week. I love all that stuff. The TBT, if you guys go tonight, you guys know who have been, the energy is pretty dang cool. It's loud. It's not 13,000 strong, but man, that 6,000 fans that do show up, it sounds about 13,000 strong. So that's pretty exciting. And just a reminder, former Flyer Norm Greavy and myself will have the call later on tonight, 8:00, the tip-off, Carmen's crew and the Red Scare later on right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. So pretty excited about that to bring another year of TBT and WING your way. All right. I know we talked a little bit. I touched on this before the break. I want to get into this. I keep pushing this back. My apologies. I do want to talk about, the Cincinnati Bengals getting that deal done with Demarius Mims, the expectations for him and the big picture expectation for this offensive line unit moving forward, because so much has been talked about with Jamar Chase. So much has been talked about Joe Burrow's health and obviously his contract, which was taken care of last year. At a certain point, the offensive line is going to be a big talking point for this team because as more guys get paid, it's going to be a lot more difficult to afford the Orlando Brown Juniors of the world and to be able to continue to bring in big name offensive line free agents to protect your asset. At some point, you kind of got to have some homegrown guys that are a little bit on the cheaper end that are also producing. And I think that's what makes Mims so valuable. So we'll get into that talk coming up here in just a few moments. 518-1410, 518-1410. Before I get to Shaw and the Connor Stallions, this is, by the way, two of our favorite listeners, two of our favorite callers back to back. I mean, this is some big league stuff here in Dayton. So shout out to these next two. But we got Mikey. Mikey, I appreciate you holding. I know you want to talk a little TBT. How you doing, my friend?
Doing all right, Justin. Yeah, doing fine. How are you and Kevin doing?
Not too bad. Kev's off today. He'll be back tomorrow.
Is he going to be out there tonight?
He won't. Actually, I do think he'll be out there tonight. Yes, I know he has tickets. I do.
If I meet you, I'd love to meet him. I mean,
Kevin, if you're listening,
anyway,
I'm going to send him your way.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, you guys are really an asset to this Miami Valley, this community. You really are. I mean, I love this thing. I love it.
The TBT.
It's exciting. The TBT.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. The people that poke fun at it, I'm like, I get it, but if you're a fan of these guys when they're in college and you get to see them play together again, or you get to see like Scoochie play with Landers and Mike Sell, who did not play together, I think that stuff's really cool. I think people really appreciate it, and I love that it's in the city of Dayton every year.
Well, I want to see Aaron Kraft. I always liked him. Now, there was times I criticized him because there was times I thought he was kind of rough. But after watching Brad Davison at Wisconsin, I thought, oh God, I wish Aaron Kraft was on Ohio State's team. He wouldn't put up with Brad Davison for 2 seconds. Brad Davison would be playing basketball in the upper bleachers. But anyway, no, I love this thing, and it gets you pumped up for the coming basketball season in October, November, December.
No, it does, and I give the fans a lot of credit too, because you know what, we could think we could really like it, and those who don't like it, that's fine. But the fans tell you a different story, and I think that's one reason why they go to these basketball centric communities like Dayton. It doesn't surprise me that the TBT has continuously come back to UD Arena every year because the fans fill that arena up. I mean, hell, a few years ago, I think it was the Boeheim's Army or whatever, Syracuse was in the title game. There was no Ohio team. There was no Carmen's Crew or Red Scare, but they still had thousands and thousands of fans show up to watch the TBT finals. It's just, if you're a basketball fan, a college basketball fan, it definitely kind of gives you that little college basketball rub in the month of July before we turn all our attention to college football. So in the NFL. So I always appreciate it.
Well, of course, I love basketball. I mean, basketball is not my number one sport. You know what my number one sport is. And by the way, I'm going to be last year, July 4th, 2023, the city of Shelby, Montana celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Dempsey-Gibbons fight, the sack of Shelby. Have you ever heard about that or read about that?
No, sir.
Oh, you need to. I helped them with that.
Doesn't surprise me.
I helped them with that.
Mr. Boxing aficionado, it does not surprise
me.
Well,
I got 3 shirts out of it. 2 of them are the same. One's large and one's extra large. I'm going to wear the large tonight, so you'll see one of the shirts that I got. And I got a mug. I got the newspaper article about it. And then I got a book. Tommy Gibbons' grandson wrote this book about the fight, and he autographed it for me. A friend of mine got it for me. I wasn't able to go because of family, I couldn't travel because of family. But anyway, I got all that for help. Now, I helped him with the 100th anniversary of the Dempsey-Willard fight in 2019. And I was promised a shirt, which I never got. But this thing made up for it, though, this Dempsey-Gibbons thing.
Mikey, before you go, thoughts on Xavier and Dayton going head-to-head? I know it's an exhibition game on October 20th, I believe. What do you think about that? I wish the two would just play in a regular season game. But
well, I do, too. But let me tell you something. When you're a UD basketball fan, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth to even mention the word Xavier. I mean, I'm not a Xavier fan at all, or a Cincinnati Bearcat fan. I like the fact they're playing Cincinnati, but I wish they would play Xavier. I really do. There was electricity in the air when you walked into that arena when Dayton played Xavier, and the same with Notre Dame.
No, and look, but that's the thing though. Like it's like Ohio State coming last year, agreeing to do this. I think it's great that you have a brand like Ohio State that's willing to tie their name to a charity basketball game like this, an exhibition game. But right. It's like, it's a cop-out, though. Like, hey, we're willing to come to UD Arena, but it's safe for Ohio State because last year, if Chris Holtman's, and he's no longer their head coach, but when he was their head coach, if they lose to Dayton at the arena, that's, whatever. It's an exhibition game, right? Like, you're not out anything. And it's kind of the same thing here. I'm curious how much of that hatred is going to be on display by a home UD crowd with Xavier in town when it's supposed to be for, a charity for, in this exhibition game. But it's a cop-out, though, because if Dayton wins, Xavier just says, well, it's an exhibition game. It's not like it counts. It doesn't matter.
Well, and, Justin, you know your sports, Justin. Rivalry supersedes almost anything. I mean, come on. I mean, I imagine a lot of people are going to take that into consideration, that it's really for a charity event and everything. But
Mikey, I wonder how many more before they get old Wright State in there.
Well, Justin, I would not be opposed to a Dayton-Wright State matchup. I think it's UD. I think it's the fact that, see, a lot of people don't they realize it, but maybe they have a trouble understanding it. College basketball is not only a sport, it's a business. And for some reason or other, UD feels it's in their best interest not to play. If I had to vote, I would vote for the game.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely would vote for the game. I have seen no reason why they shouldn't play, at least maybe even every other year. Something like that, once at UD, once at Wright State and everything. But I got 2 more quick things I want to tell you before I leave. two men are going to be on my mind tonight when I watch that Red Scare versus the Carmen's Crew.
Yep.
I'm going to be thinking of Tom Blackburn and Fred Taylor. You know in your heart that they're watching somewhere.
No, I mean, look, the nostalgia of this, absolutely, no doubt. Why wouldn't they?
And I'm going to ask you one more quick question before I go. Now, you're a Wright State fan,
Yep.
and Wright State has great tradition in basketball. How's come nobody from Wright State, or especially you, has made a move to get Coach Underhill in the College Basketball Hall of Fame in St. Louis, Missouri?
I mean, right now, look, as far as that's concerned, obviously with the exits there, it wasn't the most ceremonial exit, right? As far as that's concerned. And
well, Adolph Rupp's in the Hall of Fame. No, Adolph Rupp's in the Hall of Fame, and his team got caught back in the early 50s.
That. But I'm also very well aware too that this is a fan base that is not it's not like they come in masses, right? So you have to make a wave to get a lot of people behind that. I don't think anyone out there is against it by any means, but I think it's hard to really get momentum on any kind of stance like that out there, considering you need to get a bunch of people behind it.
Well, here's how
not against it. Well,
here's how you would approach that. I'm sure they have a Division II level in their Hall of Fame. Okay, Ralph Underhill won the led Wright State to the NCAA championship in 1983 in his 5th season.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get him into the Division II level because he won a national championship. He was there 18 years. He had 10 20-win seasons. The man was a hell of a coach. I don't know what happened other than that. Look, you vote for these guys for what they accomplished on the basketball court or in the boxing ring. You don't vote for them for saints.
No, and look, that me and you can agree with. It's not as if we're condoning any bad things that have happened, not in this particular situation, but any situation out there. It does come down to the sport aspect of it. And this is not discrediting Division II whatsoever, not even slightly. But I think the other reason you're not going to get a big, heavy outcrying of push for it is because it is, a lot of people aren't passionate about that level. It doesn't take away the success that they had by any means.
No,
I just think that's really what it comes down to.
Well, one more thing. Don't you think, and I think this, but I want to know what you think. Don't you think that it would add to Wright State's prestige as a basketball power, though, if they had a former coach in the Hall of Fame?
Yes and no. I don't know what that would do for the perception of the program right now. I think that for those who are associated with the program to have that appreciation for some of the big, great names from the past, that definitely goes a long way. And those who are associated with the program do a great job of honoring those who have come previously with that program. I think right now, though, what this program desperately needs more than absolutely anything is some kind of recent tournament run to kind of hang their hat on. They had that getting their first tournament win at UD Arena. I know some people try to discredit it because it was the first 4, but a tournament win's a tournament win, and to do it in your own city and to do it at UD Arena, considering the circumstances of that team being afraid to play them, this, that, and the other, I thought that it added a lot of flair to it.
Well, I thought Scott Nagy was a class act and a real gentleman and a hell of a coach.
Fantastic. And Clint Sargent's going to do a fantastic job.
Well, I think so too. But I'll tell you what, there was times I wanted to call Wright State and ask them if they wanted to trade coaches.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
I wanted Scott Nagy because I think Scott Nagy was a hell of a strategist.
Look,
I mean, he was more than just a coach. He was a chess player.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, the first coach in the program's history to come and take them to not back to back, but to multiple NCAA tournaments. No coach.
Did he ever go to the NIT too?
He went to the NIT. They played Clemson. Ironically enough, they played Clemson, Brad Brunell, and it was actually, Clemson won, but it was like Wright State had their chances down the stretch. The other NIT year was 20, but they didn't get to play in that because of, COVID. So.
COVID, yeah, I know. Well, listen, Justin, it's been nice talking to you. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the UD Arena, and I hope I get to meet Kevin. And I'll see you then. I'll wear my shirt.
Sounds like a plan. Well, it'll be good to meet you later tonight. Thank you, Mikey.
Okay, and tell Shaw I said hi. Will you?
He's coming up next. I'll let him know.
Okay, bye.
Man, that was Mikey. Mikey and I haven't always seen eye to eye. Mikey and I famously had one of the biggest blow-ups on this show, not even 2 years ago. He called me every mean name that you could think of. He called me every name that you're allowed to say on the air before actually getting in trouble. But yeah, if you want to see it, @1KevNash, go to @1KevNash on Twitter. It's still pinned to the very top of his Twitter account. It's right there. It's right there. I mean, it was a big time blow up between Mikey and I, but didn't mean to get down that far of a rabbit hole here in the month of July. But I appreciate Mikey as far as that's concerned. Again, the TBT WING Red Scare Carmen's Crew coming up later on tonight, 8:00 the tip off. Ohio State's alumni team going up against the Dayton Flyers alumni team. at UD Arena. All right. Whereas, like, I want to get back into this quick. I tell you what, Shaw, you're waiting one more. You got to wait one more because that went way longer than I needed it to. I want to get it. Look, this documentary, as far as I'm concerned, from a Buckeye fan perspective, all right, I think it's just going to tick me off because the fact that it's the view from Connor Stallion's side. He wants to tell his side of the story. Well, I don't understand what side of his is. I mean, this sounds like it's going to be a lot of excuse making. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him to fill the gaps to make him sound like he didn't do anything wrong. But the bottom line is, okay, is when you got fired, multiple coaches got fired, multiple suspensions handed down. All right, the rule changes that happen in college football because of your sign stealing scandal. Like I'm here to tell you, I don't really care what your side is. Because nothing that you say is good unless you have outright proof that all of this was made up and that you did absolutely none of this stuff that led to the fallout that it basically led to. This is just going to be him controlling the narrative, and kudos to him for trying. But the bottom line is Connor Stallions. I mean, while everyone talks about Harbaugh and the coaches that got fired and suspended and this, that, and the other, they won a national championship. And those that think just because his presence on the sideline was no longer there throughout the season, the back half of the season and during the college show, to act like all the work that he had done to gather all the signs and all this stuff, to gather all the information that he did, to act like that didn't play a role on this team in the back half of the season, that's absolute comedy as far as I'm concerned. We'll be right back. 518-1410, the biggest Michigan fan of them all, Mr. David Shaw. He's going to weigh in. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner with you here. Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. TBT, WING coming up later on tonight. Carmen's Crew, Ohio State's alumni team taking on Red Scare, the Dayton Flyers alumni team. Scoochie Smith and the Red Scare going up against, of course, Sullinger and the Ohio State Buckeyes Carmen's Crew, and that'll be later on tonight, 8 o'clock, the tip-off. Former Flyer Norm Greavy and myself will be on the call right here at 8 o'clock, 1410 Wing AM. All right, so I don't know what to make of this Connor Stallions documentary. We know what the subject is. We know that he wants to go basically explain his side of the story. He wants to explain his side. The thing is, though, as much as I'm curious about this, I don't really care what he says about his side. We know, think about everything that we know and don't know about this sign stealing scandal that rocked Michigan's world last year. That, basically coincided with them going on to win a national championship. Think of all the stuff that we know and don't know. And think about this documentary that's coming out. Think about everything that we know. Think about everything that we don't know. What we know is the Connor Stallions stuff. We know the role that he played. We know what he did that they say he didn't do, but obviously he did it. That's why they fired him. That's why, there's so much investigations going on with this. Coaches lost their job, multiple suspensions. What are we doing? That didn't happen if he did nothing. Stallions wasn't fired if he didn't do anything wrong. So he wants to tell his side of the story, the side that we already know. The side that we don't know is Michigan's involvement. And I already know, this is what and look, this is a wild thing. This is one of the most interesting, polarizing stories in the history of sports, okay? The bottom line is, the thing that pisses me off about all this is that you just know that they had a plan for when the blank hit the fan. Because I thought that this was very weird. There were clips in multiple Michigan games down the stretch where he was actually at games still, not on the sideline, but with at the bowl games, at the playoff games, he was with former Michigan Wolverines. He was with current players' families and taking pictures and stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, Flyer fans, Dayton Flyer fans, but if there was a assistant coach, okay, let's go back to last year. You have Deron Holmes, you had A-10 championship expectations, NCAA tournament expectations. Let's say that you had a rogue assistant coach that was doing something that was technically to help your team win, but ultimately cheated and got your team pretty much just absolutely railroaded by the NCAA and provided so many distractions. Wouldn't you hate that individual? I would. I would be like, what are you doing? We have Deron Holmes. We have a chance to win to win the A-10 and to go on a deep tournament run. We have a chance, and you're ruining it by going rogue, apparently. This is why I don't believe that he went rogue. I don't believe that he did this all on his own, okay? No matter what he says, no matter what the stupid documentary is going to say, he didn't go rogue, okay? He laid out the plan, and he executed it, and he got caught. And I do believe that there was some kind of chamber in this plan that, okay, if I get caught, all right, hey, just so you know, we're going to have to fire you if you get caught because we got to distance ourselves from the situation. Okay, we got to distance ourselves from the situation. All right, that's exactly what happened. We got to distance so that when the Kinners of the world and everyone complains, we can look at those losers and say, hey, what are you mad at? We got rid of them. No, you got rid of him once he got caught, but you had no problem reaping the rewards and benefits from all the stuff that he did that you knew about, that you pretended you didn't know about. Give me a break. Give me a break. So like I said earlier, if as a fan, you know that particular coach did something that could risk your season, I'd be very upset with that individual. Current players didn't care. They didn't care that the cheating scandal that he was a part of could have cost them. What if the NCAA would have come out and said, or what if college football would have prevented them, because the NCAA technically couldn't prevent them from the playoff. But what if they would have come out and really just dropped the hammer down on Michigan and suspend, you know what I mean? In the middle of the season because of his actions. That would even the thing is, you would be angry at that. And it would be his fault if you actually are gullible enough to believe their story that he acted rogue. He didn't. And the fact that he's coming out now, I think the timing is interesting because the NCAA they have yet to release their findings. I'll be curious to see if the findings come out before this documentary is dropped. But I feel like it's a way to control the narrative, to basically, let me tell my side of the story. Netflix, I'm going to be an open book. I don't think, I lied earlier. I don't think that he's going to try and make it sound like he didn't do anything wrong. I changed my mind. The more I've thought about this, as I've read this throughout the show, is That I think that he is going to fall on the sword, take it out, and then find a new spot that he hasn't fallen on the sword with and drop on the sword again. I think he is going to continue to do his part to distance himself from it, to save those guys, to save the pro, to do whatever he can so that when the findings come out, everyone could be like, I can't believe the NCAA did this. Connor Stallions just admitted to all of it. I don't believe a word that's going to come out of his mouth. A cheating scumbag who helped his team win a national championship in an immoral way. I don't support that. I'm not on board with that. I'm going to watch the documentary, but I'm going to hate watch the documentary. I'm very fascinated. I think the timing of all of this, it's a way to control the narrative, and it's a smart play. Never said he was dumb. He's a very intelligent individual. The way he was able to execute all of this, I mean, the way he attacked it as if it was some kind of op, good for him. He's not a dumb individual. Morally corrupt, but he's not a dumb individual. So yeah, look, we'll see what ultimately happens when it's all said and done. But nonetheless, Roger on YouTube. What up, Roger? Kinner could do weeks on the Stallions content. It still ticks me off even to this day. The way, I mean, all the things that happened with it. I mean, the fact that we could see clips of him standing on Central Michigan sideline, stealing signs from Michigan State. You need to steal signs from a horrible Michigan State team. Give me a break. They won a national championship. There's still an asterisk next to it. They are the Barry Bonds of college football. It's as simple as that. Barry Bonds is still the home run king. There's an asterisk next to it. Michigan, your national champion. There's an asterisk next to it. So before I bring Shaw on, I just want to make it clear. I'm fast. There's two different directions that this can go. He is going to basically say, I was thrown under the bus. Here's what I actually did. I was following orders from Harbaugh, which by that point I'd be a big Stallions fan if he actually went that route. But I don't believe that's going to be the case. The reason I don't think this documentary is going to be very similar to Swamp Kings, in my opinion. What I think is going to ultimately happen is it's going to tell us all the stuff we already know. It's going to tell us the stuff we already know. And it is what it is. So there it is. Roger says, what is the most incriminating is that they changed the rule about communication with the sideline after the Stallions debacle. Yeah, a lot happened. For every Michigan fan that says nothing happened, coaches were suspended. Coaches were fired. Stallions was fired. Investigations going on. Rules have changed. Coaches throwing Michigan under the bus. Like for a situation that nothing happened, a whole lot happened. Oh no. Shaw, I bet you can't wait for this documentary to come out.
I could care less.
Oh, so you're worried about it?
No, I don't care about it. You're talking about something that was back in October, and you can roll the tape when you had me sitting in front of you at the fire station when I sat there and told you the changing of the rule for the radio and all of that was already in play. It was in play from last year. It should have been approved last year, but for whatever reason, the same reason why we don't have any ruling on what Michigan knew and what Michigan didn't know and what Harbaugh knew and what Harbaugh didn't know, because the NCAA moves slower than glacier pace. They ruled against it or didn't rule at all. What you look up to find out that is inconclusive. One article will tell you that the NCAA didn't rule on it. Another article will tell you that they did rule on it and it didn't pass. Regardless, back at this time last year, that was a rule that was already being discussed about being put into the rule book. I digress. I'm done talking about it. You bring it up almost every other time I call in here so you can get me fired up and you can get fired up.
Hold up. Time out before you get all up in your feelings. I didn't announce the release of this documentary today. They did. This was just announced today. It was just announced before I went on the air. What are you talking about?
I didn't even know anything about it until you started talking about it.
And it was just announced a little bit ago. And that's great. We could talk Reds, but let's not act like I just made this story up out of thin air. I mean, I'm not Connor Stallions. I don't lie.
I'm not saying you made it up. That's not what I said at all.
Well, you said that I'm bringing this up just to get you fired up.
You've been carrying it for the last 4 segments because you know who's on hold.
Actually, that was added to the rundown because I had my rundown for the show done. That got added late because it was just announced before we went on the air.
So the last 3 segments, every time you went to break, you just kept bringing it up because it had nothing to do with me on hold.
I just wasn't ready to go there. Yeah, I could have brought it up a long time ago, and you still would have been pouting because I bring this up every time you call in.
I'm not pouting. I don't care.
You called in with an attitude.
Difference.
You're all pissed off because I apparently made this documentary. I released this documentary.
For the last 3 segments, this is what you've been talking about.
I haven't talked about it. I dropped little hints about it. I've been talking TBT. I've been talking Reds. I've been talking everything else.
And you've been talking a bunch of nonsense for the last 2 segments about it.
Nonsense being what? What about it was nonsense?
Everybody got fired. Oh, it's funny because when you look up what Connor actually did, he resigned. He didn't get fired.
Oh, how
very
odd. How very noble of him.
That's odd.
How very noble of him, by the way.
That's odd.
Never said every coach, by the way. Never said every.
You said him. He didn't get fired. He resigned.
Oh, very noble of him. Okay,
you're
fine. He didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. He resigned for no reason.
Dude, we can sit here and argue about this like it's October and it just came out. It doesn't matter. Nothing's going to change. Ohio State fans and you can continue being pissed off and upset that this happened.
I'm fine. I'm happy right now.
Or you can move on and just realize that the football season's about to come and no one gives a damn about it no more. No one.
Then why? You're right. No one gives a damn, but Netflix is going to spend millions of dollars on a documentary that nobody cares about. You're right.
Because they know people are going to watch it.
So they care.
Because we're retarded. That's why.
Why you guys say that? Why you guys say that word? Why?
Because because it's dumb, dude.
Then say dumb. Don't say the other word.
Whatever. Get all in your feelings about something else.
I'm not. I don't really get up in my feelings too much, but as a guy that has a brother with special needs, I'd appreciate if someone doesn't say that word. I don't think that's too much to ask.
I'm sorry.
Kinner and Kev Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Don't say it doesn't matter. Don't say that this topic doesn't matter. Okay? Don't say that people don't care about it. Netflix isn't spending millions of dollars on this if people don't care. You're sensitive to the fact that it makes your program look bad because finally your program wins a national championship and you can't fully enjoy it because Connor Stallions. So, Forrest, what up, Forrest? Bro, you act like only Michigan is the only team who has ever done this. Are we really reaching back into our old bag of tricks? This was like on repeat. Bro, every team's doing it. Every team's doing it. Every team's doing it. Not every team's getting caught, apparently. And you know what? Not every team was doing it to this exact measure. Not every team was doing it to this exact measure. It's as simple as that. Everyone cheats. The blue got caught. They all cheat. All right, Forrest. At least we kind of meet in the middle there. I don't think teams cheat to that level, though. I don't. It's actually impressive how far out they went to get that rolling. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the sign stealing, I do believe that they're keeping track of what's going on, across the pond. But I don't think that it's the way that they went about it. Like, a little interesting as far as that goes. But anyway, it is what it is. All right, Kinner and Kev Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll step aside for a few moments. 518-1410, 518-1410. Talk a little Cincinnati Bengals. Unless I need to get permission. I was talking nonsense the last 2 segments, apparently, so hopefully I don't talk nonsense. Talk about Cincinnati Bengals. Mike Brown had some interesting comments about, remember last year when Joe Burrow and Mike Brown got on the cart together and they drove around the practice field, and this was about week 3 or 4, whenever they played the Rams. Mike Brown kind of let it be known today what that conversation was between the two, and he feels bad about what that conversation was. I find this fascinating. We're going to talk about it when we come back. Kinner and Kev Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Kevin Nash will be back tomorrow. TBT on WING later on tonight, 8 o'clock, the tip-off, Carmen's Crew, Red Scare. Carmen's Crew, Ohio State's alumni team going up against Red Scare. Dayton Flyers alumni team, former Flyer Norm Gravy, and myself will be on the call, 8 o'clock, the tip-off. So with camp coming up, again, we talked about these key dates to keep an eye on as far as that's concerned for the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, key dates to keep an eye on. So rookies reported over the weekend. All right. And Amarius Mims, obviously had yet to get a contract done. He was the last of the first round 2024 draft picks to get his deal signed, but he officially got it done. Fully guaranteed contract. I think had close to $8 million in the upfront signing bonus, this, that, and the other. We talked about this on Off the Bench earlier today, but, I think he is a very crucial draft pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. I wasn't a fan of the draft pick considering the fact that he is a guy that really didn't, he was injury prone in college. When he was out there, his measurements, just absolutely insane. He's a freaking beast, right? And if you want a big behemoth guy up front blocking for your franchise quarterback, Joe Burrow, when he's out there, that's the kind of guy you're looking for, right? But the problem is he's considered a project by many, because of the fact that he hasn't played many games and he hasn't had much experience under his belt because of the limitations he had in college due to injuries. And the Bengals draft him in the first round, and you're just like, man, if any other team did that, I don't think it would be getting as much concern. But it's an organization that can't draft offensive line, right? And let's be clear, they could draft him. They could draft with the best of them. They can't develop worth a damn. They can't develop any. They really struggle developing the offensive line. Frank Pollock, I was told 2 years ago, was the best offensive line coach in football. I don't know about that. I don't even think a little bit. I think he's done a very average job, if I'm being nice. Okay, you look at the fact that the Bengals, to their credit, realized, okay, you know what? We can't. We're not very good at this developing offensive line thing, so we're gonna have to go spend some money, and that's what they did. They bring in both Trent Brown, and they bring in some huge guys in the offseason. They had Orlando Brown Jr., right? Like they have some big dudes up front. They've done a good job addressing the offensive line over the last couple of years. But the problem is these guys are experienced offensive linemen, but they're gonna have to, can they keep the money coming in to pay that offensive line when you have already made Joe Burrow the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and you're about to make Jamar Chase the highest paid wide receiver in football? By the way, that did come out today. Duke Tobin and Mike Brown have basically both said that negotiations have started. So we'll see how long it takes to get that done. But the bottom line is that this pick of Amarius Mims is a very crucial piece to the long-term success of the Bengals, because at some point you have to get Pro Bowl caliber offensive line production from guys that you're not forking over a ton of money to, at least for the time being, until you figure out how you're going to balance out the roster once Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are both paid at the same time. I don't want to hear about front-loaded contracts or back-loaded contracts or rollover contracts or Paycor Stadium / whatever other name you want to throw in there. The Bengals have done exactly what they've needed to get their ducks in a row, to have the money to pay for a roster that can continue to keep Joe Burrow's Super Bowl window open. The roster has consistently taken a step back over the years because we knew that was going to be the case. When your three best playmakers are all on rookie deals, it's a lot easier to distribute that money in a overall balanced attack around across both sides of the ball. Now they're having to be very strategic with how they go about doing that, which is one reason that T. Higgins is on the franchise tag. He signed the tender. He is going to play in his final year as a Cincinnati Bengal, and then he'll go get paid, and the Bengals will move on. And they're hoping that, obviously, that the receiver they took in the draft is going to be enough to kind of fill in the gap and fill in the production of T. Higgins when that time comes. But Amarius Mims is a very important, crucial piece to this when it's all said and done. Because if the Bengals can hit on him, if he can develop, if he could be a big time cog of their success moving forward, a guy that they drafted and developed, I think that goes a long way. That allows them to kind of deep sigh, sigh of relief that they're going to have now that flexibility to go spend some money elsewhere and not have to focus on that. They can't continuously buy every piece of that offensive line moving forward. Now, I know you're going to be spending money, but you have to hit on some young offensive linemen initially to balance out the line. You're paying for your entire offensive line right now. And you could say, well, okay, what's wrong with that? You're not going to be able to sustain that. You can't. I mean, look, at the $40 million is invested into the offensive line. Probably more than that now that you get this deal done with Mims, right? All right, and Jamar Chase is going to be $36 million a year just by himself. So now you're at $76 million plus the 50. When you have $120, I mean, keep in mind you're spending close to $200+ million. When $120 million is tied up into 3 position groups, that's a problem. That's not very fun. You have to balance that out a little bit. And I don't think that's a good sustainability plan for them as far as that's concerned. Mims is very crucial. Keep an eye on the development of Mims. I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on. I think that is very important as far as that's concerned. Okay, so veterans report to training camp tomorrow for the Bengals. Their first training camp practice will be on Wednesday. Season ticket and waitlist members only will be able to attend that. And then the first public practice will be on Monday, July 29th, a week from today. Their preseason opener will be against the Buccaneers, and that'll be at Paycor Stadium on August 10th. And then they'll have their joint practice with the Bears in Chicago on August 15th. So there's that. All right, the reason I bring this up, came out today, Duke Tobin, Zach Taylor and company, everyone addressing the media. The Bengals are going to have a different approach to preseason coming up. Apparently they are going to, you will see Joe Burrow, who I think I read today, is it true? He's only taken 3 preseason snaps in his 4 years in the league, whatever. Look, I think the most overrated thing in the world is to have a hot take on whether the Bengals should play their starters in the preseason. Because you got to ask yourself, what does playing in the preseason consist of? Okay, if we're talking Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and you're talking guys like that, you're going to put them out there for a possession, all right? And Joe Burrow's going to hand it off a couple times and maybe just do a quick drop back and just a quick, dump pass, and then he's going to go hold his shoulder pads and helmet on the sideline for the rest of the game. And you want me to believe that the Bengals will have a faster start in September because 3 days over the next 45 days, he'll hand it off 2 times in a live preseason game? I don't buy into that. I appreciate that Zach Taylor is saying, hey, look, we have not played our starters in preseason games in the past, and we've had slow Septembers for 2 or 3 straight years now. I appreciate the fact that he's just mixing it up and trying something different. If the Bengals get off to a hot September start, it's not going to be because they played in the preseason. It's going to be because Joe Burrow's healthy. It's as simple as that. If Joe Burrow's healthy, they get off to a hot start in September. If he's not healthy, we're doing the same regurgitated talking points that we've done the last 2 or 3 years. That's very crucial. That's something to keep an eye on as far as that's concerned. But nonetheless, so I wanted to play this for you. I haven't beat up on Mike Brown in a while, but look, I'm not a big fan of this. Like, I don't like when players have too much power within an organization. I like when players have influence on an organization. But this next clip, keep in mind, who owns the Cincinnati Bengals? Does Joe Burrow own the Bengals, or does does Mike Brown own the Bengals? Mike Brown owns the Bengals, right? Like, if my boss came in here and told me, hey, Justin, I need you to start if the owner of Alpha Media came into this office and said, I need you to start doing your show this way, and then the owner of my company walks out and I ignore him and just do whatever I want anyways, that's a problem. That's a bad attitude on my part, and that's a bad attitude on your part if you do it. So why are we praising this? Take a listen. This is Mike Brown. Caleb No from Cincinnati shared this a little bit ago. You remember last year when Mike Brown came out on the golf cart and was and had Joe Burrow called him into the golf cart with him? Take a listen to this. Shamefaced for what? To be honest, the only guy that made any damn sense during that stretch of Joe Burrow playing when he should not have been playing was clearly Mike Brown. This is the problem. Like, why is Mike Brown? Oh, I'm embarrassed. You're embarrassed at what? You just made Joe Burrow the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. You gave him more guaranteed money at quarterback than you have any quarterback in the history of your franchise. And you felt guilty because you told him that, hey, maybe you shouldn't play because you could barely walk and your stats suck because you statistically were the worst quarterback in the NFL 2 or 3 weeks into the season. And you felt bad? Why? That was the right move to go to him and say, hey, I don't really want you to play. Just like it was the right, like we watched the Michael Jordan documentary. Michael Jordan didn't like it, but the Bulls front office and ownership said, you're not playing. We're putting a minutes cap on you, or you're not playing. Like, they were the adults in the room. Michael Jordan didn't run the Bulls, and that's why the Bulls were a very well-run organization at that time, because there was levels to it. But this is that, like, smaller, people rip the Browns. Oh, look, they were desperate. They're desperate. This reeks of desperation when you let Joe Burrow call the shots, because how did that work out for him? How did that work out? It was a year of constantly being banged up. He was never truly healthy. And when he did start to get on a roll, now, again, completely separate injury with the wrist, yes, to some certain extent, but let's not act like, again, continuously just getting beat up on because he lacked the mobility to kind of break out of the pocket to begin with because of the calf. Let's not act like that didn't play a role in this either. I'm not a fan of, like, when the ownership, if the owner of my company comes and tells me I need to stop doing something or start doing it a certain way, I better do it. But man, oh man, Joe Burrow does not run the Cincinnati Bengals. Mike Brown owns the Cincinnati Bengals. He shouldn't be apologizing to Joe Burrow. That's a weak look on his part. And that just shows it's a weak organization. I don't care. You can hate me all you want. Be mad at me all you want. You wouldn't be the first person to get mad at me today. But Mike Brown should not be apologizing for telling Joe Burrow, who couldn't walk at that time, that you probably shouldn't play. You're my number one investment right now. I sold the naming rights to my stadium. All right, I don't have the money up front in escrow to pay you, so I had to sell the naming rights to my stadium. Our Super Bowl chances and playoff chances depend on you. So the fact that Mike Brown was the only one with the brain that could actually tell him that, and he just gets off the cart and does whatever the hell he wants anyways, not a fan of that. Don't like that at all. But hey, I'm just a hater. Anyways, is what it is. I just thought that was interesting. Joe Burrow just does what he wants. As the owner of the team tells him to do something, he just ignores it and goes and does it anyways. I'm not a fan of that. Is what it is. Is what it is. It's the Kenner and Kev Show, 1410 ESPN Radio, hour number 3. Coming up next.